Hello and welcome to Municipal Matters here on your TV. I'm your host, York Bellsmith. This episode, we are joined by Municipality of Port Hope Mayor Bob Sanderson. Bob, once again, thank you for doing this. And we'll start, as always, just asking how you and your family are holding up through this pandemic.
Well, I appreciate the question, and I can tell you that I think I'm holding up well. Um, I don't know how things could get busier, but they seem to be. But here is summer's coming along, and the days are longer, the nights are nice, the sun is out. So I think that just helps everybody. And I'll ask you the same question, York. How are you doing?
Holding up pretty well. We're still going through a kitchen reno, having a deck built out back because we're going to be spending a lot more time as a family here this summer as opposed to going anywhere else. So that's all sort of been going on over the last couple of weeks. And the kitchen reno's been a lot longer than that. But things are getting close to the end now. So we're really going to be able to enjoy summer and looking forward to that. Looking forward to paying attention to what the province is doing as well, because the big change since the last time you and I chatted was phase 2 or stage 2 of the opening of the province. Was announced by Premier Doug Ford, at least through our area for sure. How has that affected so far the municipality?
Well, I think the primary effect that we're seeing is that we're internally organizing to fall in step with the province ability. So we're trying to get the clarification on through the health department, particularly how to open our recreation facilities, how to make sure that we open our facilities, and at the same time, quite frankly, we're trying to give as much support, to our local economy and our businesses as we can. And I think the challenge or the concerns, I think we mentioned before, we're in phase 2. Not everybody is. So there's some concern relative to transferring from one area, such as the GTA, over to ours. We haven't seen it, and I think people are respecting their visits fairly well. So it's keeping us busy, getting ready to open, but we're not just automatically opening everything. But I think, quite frankly, we're sort of excited that we've done a really good job of maintaining the health and safety of our residents, and we're really determined to continue on that approach. And I think that'll mean constant reminders and some leadership and demonstration that we're doing exactly what we're asking other people to do.
And a big thing too is to get the message out of what's going on behind the scenes to get ready to open things. Even though you're allowed to, doesn't necessarily mean that the municipality has plans in place for openings of public places, and the businesses don't necessarily have plans in place right away.
No, and from a municipal perspective, we're pretty active on our website and keeping COVID-19 updates. So we are constantly updating when things may open, how they should open, those kind of things. So the public should, I think, certainly pay attention to the local websites. Obviously, pay attention to the province for guidelines and clarification on other issues. But we're trying to, and we have Kate Ingram in our communication department is working pretty steady to try to keep that communication open to the public. All our counselors are fairly aware. I'm aware, and our staff is keeping everybody up to date. The biggest, frankly, quite area is parks and recreation. That's where we probably get most of the questions, and that's certainly an area that is very important to the municipality and to ourselves and our residents. So that's getting a lot of attention right now. We get a lot of questions as to when is this opening, when is that opening, how can we do things, and our staff is giving very good advice. We won't open anything without making sure that we have the appropriate approvals. We've worked with the health department. So
Let's talk about some of the things you're looking for. Like, let's go talk specifically about the Jack Burger Sports Complex and its reopening. What does that look like? What needs to be done?
That's probably one of our more complex places. So a couple of things are being done there. We hope to open that in the next couple of weeks, probably in the first week or two of July. Obviously, all the parameters required for hygiene are being met, including our staff. But then there will be specific restrictions, as to how many people can come in, what's open, what's not open. As an example, the hot tub will not be open. The lanes will be open with restrictions. Appointments will be needed. And if you don't have appointment, I'm sorry, you're going to be turned away. So it's going to be a very controlled environment, particularly to start with limitations. As I say, particularly with respect to making an appointment, coming in. Certainly the lane activities and some of the children's stuff is very important. So you'll see that as our first step, and we hope to basically have the facility open early July. And again, we'll be very clear on how the expected usage is going to be. And the big thing will be you just can't show up on the door and come on in. You're going to have to make an appointment, and not all the parts of the facilities are going to be open.
Right. Let's go now to another part of town, in the Town Park Recreation Center. What challenges are they facing? What's their plan? Is it much the same? Is there anything that's unique to the Town Park Rec Center?
Well, I think primarily there, the issue is our day camps, and they're all going to be managed up there, and they're going to have a lot of restrictions on them. As an example, the daily drop-ins are not going to be there. You're going to have weekly participation. We've managed so that there'll be one staff member per 8 participants. So again, the maximum is 10, and all the physical distancing will be there, all the disinfectants, all the hygiene requirements, and it's also going to be managed tightly, through the direction of our health department as well. And
How,
it's mostly for younger children also.
right. And that's going to present a challenge in itself when it comes to the social distancing part of it. And I mean, that's just not going to come natural to kids at all. The enforcement of that is going to be pretty tough.
Yep, but I think by the time we get there, I think we'll be able to manage it, which is also why we're having limiting the numbers and restricting things. And the staff is very good and creative in still allowing the development of child behavior and doing things without being draconian and kind of keeping kids so they can't socialize. Raising children is getting to socialize. And summer camps in municipalities and their parks and rec, is why we're spending so much time and money on it, is a critical component of the community. So we'll be opening those up, and there will be also clear directions on that. And as I said, the daily registrations are one thing that won't happen. You're going to have to pre-register and participate for a week as well.
I think
And
one of the things, sorry, go ahead.
Just to say the program again, I've got some notes here, but it's basically 8:30 to Friday as well. So those will be the hours that those camps will run.
Right. Now, I think a bit of responsibility is going to fall on parents as well, who are sending their kids to camp, to have those conversations and get them prepared, take the opportunity to get their kids prepared for the way it's going to be like that it hasn't been like in previous years.
Yep, I think you're right. And I think that generally is part of the process anyway. They've been pretty good, I think, in the past. I've never heard anything otherwise. But I think specifically this time, clarity has to come from the municipality to the parents, so they clearly understand what the expectations will be, and what rules will be followed, primarily for their own safety. So I don't see that as a particular challenge in somebody who is saying, as an example, my children need to do this or that. They're going to need to follow our rules, and our rules are in the interest of safety. But I really think this is one area, and you sort of mentioned, we need to be very clear with the parents the expectation, so that they can primarily pass it on to the children in a nice way, not so that they're afraid to go outside or whatever. So those are real challenges. But I've also kind of believe and notice that the parents and the children interactions through this have sort of got softer, and maybe the family units are a little tighter, and they've had conversations already. So although it'll be a challenge, I'm pretty comfortable with the staff being able to manage it, both introducing it and then through the process.
Are there safety protocols at this point, or is that something that's being mapped out kind of as we speak?
Being mapped out. I mean, there are some, very clear ones, but I think the devil gets in the details. We've certainly seen from the provincial perspective, when they make announcements, everybody runs back for clarification. So I think we're at the clarification and the communication level to make sure that we are communicating things out. It'd be nice to get that out sort of pre-opening, so we get feedback, because we'll get people who will ask questions. Every time you put something out and you think it's clear, generally you find, well, no, there's things that maybe people need to have clarified.
Right, absolutely. Now let's talk about outdoor recreation sports in the municipality and the relationship to municipal fields. Will municipal fields be open for sports?
They are open and they will be open, but they cannot participate in a sport activity without giving a plan of how they follow the Department of Health rules. So we'll sanction their activity, but we won't without that plan that's also got the approval of the health department, because I think that's one of the biggest challenges we generally face. And it's probably a learning process for some of the teams also, to, how do you structure that? And so they need to deal with the health department, and they need to deliver a specific plan to our municipality as how they can engage their players or their activities such that they keep us all safe, and that they're safe, and that they're following the rules.
Right. Now, with Toronto being in stage one still, and you alluded to it earlier about people traveling from areas that are still in stage one, have there been any issues or are there any concerns with the beach in Port Hope, especially since Coburg's is closed?
Well, it's interesting you talk about the beach, because that was an area that was brought forward as a concern. Should we close them or not? We've not seen any increased activity in our beaches other than our local residents who use it, and they use it appropriately. So we have no intention of closing the beach. We will continue to monitor it and have a presence there also. Again, I think sometimes that is an important component of it. But quite frankly, we've not seen people coming from the outskirts, or even from specifically from the GT area at all at this point in time. And as I said, it does need monitoring, because it doesn't mean it won't start to happen.
Right. So it is a situation that the municipality is monitoring.
Yeah, and we're, as I said, we'd like to make sure our residents can use it and use it appropriately, and to close it restricts it from local activity too. We've never had that sort of influx, from the GTA and other areas that Victoria Beach has had, and I truly support, what they have done, and that gives them time to, iron things out so they can open it or manage it locally if they need to. We've not had that sort of profile, outside the community. Our beaches are a little bit smaller, or they seem that way. Actually, they're larger in some cases, but they're not so well known, and they're not listed, quite so highly as a destination for a lot of people. So hopefully we'll motor through, keep them open, manage them so our local residents can use them and walk on them, and picnic on them if they want, with the appropriate measures.
Are they actually are people coming out, like Port Hope residents coming out and using the beach? Are you seeing any kind of a level of confidence there of the citizens in the municipality to come out and use the beach?
Yeah, really, people are starting to use it. They have all the way along, quite frankly, except when we close it for a period of time. And I see respect. I see, families who are sitting and, having a bite to eat, or other people are sitting, a couple or whatever. And I haven't seen anybody, abuse that approach. And in fact, I think it's, such a good thing for the residents and mental health, and water and fresh air kind of seem to make people feel better. I can vouch for that for myself. So we're using it locally. I don't see any abuse of it at all, including litter and what have you. I see a high level of respect.
Excellent.
Our east and west beaches are ours.
Fantastic to hear. We have a lot more to get to. We're going to talk about a couple of things that are happening in the municipality of Port Hope when we come back after the break, as Municipal Matters continues here on your TV. Welcome back to Municipal Matters here on your TV. I'm your host, York Bellsmith, and we are chatting with Municipality of Port Hope Mayor Bob Sanderson. Bob, once again, thank you very much for taking the time. We've been talking about some things opening up or getting back to some semblance of normal with now that we're into phase two. We talked a little bit about the sports fields and stuff. I want to talk quickly about the sports groups, like the soccer organizations, the baseball organizations. Are they required to submit a return to play plan to the municipality and to the health unit as well before they can move ahead?
If they have to go through the health unit first, and then yes, they have to, get permission from the municipality by presenting that plan specifically to the municipality, and then they can have approval. And like all things, I also suspect that we will, kind of do some checks and balances to make sure that what's happening is appropriate. So yeah, I think we have a handle on that. It's probably one of the more difficult challenges because I think most sports teams aren't used to having to do that. I don't blame them, but it's going to be something I think that'll stand in good stead going forward. But the answer to your question is absolutely. The health department has to give the stamp of approval. Sort of what we did with the farmers market when we opened that. We wanted to make sure that they had a plan. They submitted that plan, and it was approved by the health department, and we monitor it, and they're doing a good job.
I'm sure some of these groups as well cover areas that include more than one health unit. So getting some to coincide with what other groups are doing. I mean, there could be challenges with getting enough teams to put any kind of a league or semblance of a league together.
Yeah, and I think that's a kind of the next challenge, because we're all going to have to be singing from the same page, so to speak. And if they're going to play in other municipalities or our sports teams are going there, we want to know that they're doing all the right things and protect our teams. And I'm sure the converse is absolutely true. They want to know what ours are. So municipalities have to work together under the guidance of the Ontario guidelines, of course, and the health departments. I don't see that I'd be very comfortable if there's a lot of variance. Everybody should be, as I say, singing from the same song page. And we
Right.
should see their plan and they should see ours. And yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. A lot of stuff. We're seeing a lot of protests and such stateside, and they've started to happen now in Canada as well. Talking about Black Lives Matter rallies, Coburg a short time ago, and there's recently been one in Port Hope as well. Talk to us a little bit about how that went in Port Hope, and what it was like in the midst of a pandemic.
Well, it's interesting. This is a social you know activity that has I think gained ground. As you mentioned, it basically started from some of the issues that were occurring in the United States and have come up here, and it does affect us. I think protests, as long as they're done appropriately and peacefully, have a purpose. I certainly support them, but not to break the rules, right? So peaceful is correct, and I think from the Black Lives Matter group in particular, we continue to fly the rainbow flag. All right, because again, I think in our strategic planning process, we're very proud to be a diversified community. Although we're a smaller community.
Right.
Like saying that, it doesn't mean we don't have ways to improve, the diversity and implementation of some of those requirements. And when we review our strategic plan, diversity, which is one of our pillars, I think will benefit, from some of the input we've had from some of the protests and the real realization, that these are atrocities that do occur, and at this point in time, we as Canadians, I think, can say, "Oh, we're exempt from that," and I will clearly tell you, I don't feel we are exempt from that, and I think we have a better track record in many ways. But this is not something I think we should just say, "Oh well, don't worry about it right now. It's the pandemic brought it on," and it's not just blacks. I think it's in all areas. Whether it be gender related, whether it be other races, colors, cultures, religions. We need to work at that, and I'm going to be certainly promoting that we delve into it fairly strongly. From a corporate perspective, what can we do? To literally, have training. Not just with staff, but perhaps support other areas through the library. We certainly have committed when we did our territorial acknowledgement, that one of the components of introducing it, because ours is fairly simple, in talking to Alderville and the First Nations, was that we would like to introduce and continue to have an educational component to that from the municipality generally. And I think when we do our strategic planning and we do a bit of a review on that, I think these movements will have had an impact for us as a community to examine our values and to make sure that we're doing the appropriate things. We have codes of conduct. We have lots of things already internally. That one might need looking at and make sure that we actually put the pen to paper and make a commitment to it.
Right, and speaking of that as well, another movement that is gaining some steam in Port Hope and the municipality has to do with the Colonel William statue in front of Town Hall. How are you seeing that?
Well, again, I see it part of the same sort of social conscience that's coming forward, and I've had a reasonable number of contacts and communications from those who are opposed to it for what it represents. The Battle of Batoche was something that at the time probably seemed to be a good idea. In today's light, it seemed somewhat oppressive. So I'm going to go back to the fact that I don't think, and I made a statement at council, I think last night. Yeah, it was only last night. It seems like a long time ago. But really acknowledging that people have objection, but I caution against a reaction. particularly from a statue. I think that most people have gone by that statue and never read the words on there, right? And when you read the words, you kind of go, okay, well, it was a really nice statue, but maybe we have to think about why it's there. But that would require a process, and for me, it would be, there are people who, maybe support, the Williams family, to support the statue. It's been there. It is part of our legacy and part of our history. Um, so I'm going to try to put it back into the strategic planning process as one component, which are there other areas within the municipality that need to be addressed? And I think we need to have the public input on it. But then at some point in time, if we do what I'd like, which is, take a review of our principles and values, particularly post-COVID and with the strategic plan, then that'll be part of the conversation. And out of that conversation will come perhaps actions. The statute may come or they may go. I don't have a preference at this point in time, one way or the other. But I do, and we've gone through this so many times in Port Hope, whether it be the hospital or the woodlot, people would like to see something done right away, and we should tear this down, or we should do this, and other people won't. We'll have a good dialogue, and I think it's the correct thing to do, and we'll move forward and embrace the thought process, but then incorporate it into council making decisions about whether our community is demonstrating clearly the values that we have in our strategic plan.
Are there any of Colonel Williams' family members still living in Port Hope?
None have contacted me, but I have to believe there are. It's a strong family name, locally. So whether they be close or direct relations, and people change their names with marriages and what have you. But Port Hope tends to have families that have been here a long time, and I suspect that the Williams family is here too. And as I said, when we kind of digest this a little bit, and I say it's not about statues, it's about diversity, it's about embracing other cultures and religions. I would really encourage that we look at that closely and say, what can we do to help continue to build that? And it's not going to happen overnight.
Would you be open to, if there is family that does come forward at Colonel Williams, of having that conversation with them or including them in the process?
Oh, I think it would be mandatory. Absolutely. Always, I think the more people who step up and comment, but in an appropriate manner, it's we can't have righteous indignation everywhere, and certainly from saying this is part of the parcel, and I'm going to continue to go back to what Port Hope is. We have good values, good principles. We're agriculturally based. We have a strong heritage, and we're just saying simply, the people who live here, are, I think, very generous, and I think they're open-minded. But maybe we need to incorporate that in a more strong way into what we are saying in our strategic plan. And then, like everything, we should have action for it. If we want to understand the indigenous rights and the First Nations, and get over anything that's in the past from our perspective, we need education and understanding. And
Right.
I think that always is helpful. Look at it in the overall good light.
Absolutely. Capitol Theatre has been struggling through this pandemic and the shutdown. Talk to us about their presentation to council on its status.
Well, this is a big area. I will clearly say I'm a strong proponent of the Capitol Theatre. I think it's an anchor of the municipality, both from a cultural perspective and from exposure, to for Port Hope, outside of Port Hope. And they gave a very good presentation. It started with a meeting that we've had with the Olga, who's the president, and some of the staff there. And it included also MPP Piccini. And it became very evident in our provincial talks and our local discussions that these theaters, local theaters, not just the capital, are really having a tough time. And I think in the presentation that was provided, it clearly indicated the benefit that the Capitol Theatre has provided. And it also, I think, to some level, gave a clear indication that maybe we're underfunding our cultural area. I think it was like we are supporting it by about 2.5%. Other municipalities are significantly higher than that. So it might mean that we are not, I think, valuing our cultural, not just our economic and tourism effect part, but the role that the Capitol Theatre plays. So the outcome of that discussion generally was that we are going to look at how we can help the Capitol Theatre specifically. They need $300,000. So we've got a couple of staff members, and we'll participate in. So how can we pull that out of the fire? The Capitol Theatre is making every move they can to adapt. I think they're going to have to continue to do that. I think they'll get some help to do that. But $300,000 is a huge amount, kind of to bail them out. But they have good support generally. I think they have had fairly good municipal support, but I think it's time to really have a hard look at our Capitol Theatre, a heritage building, a national heritage building with a hardworking crew and a couple hundred volunteers.
Everybody on the same page and understanding the importance of the Capitol Theatre to the municipality of Port Hope and beyond, really. I think with all the heads coming together, a proper solution and a successful solution should be able to be come up with. That's going to do it for us. We've run out of time already. These half-hour chats are really, really quick. I thank you very much, Bob, for taking time out of it, what we know is a very busy day, for sitting down and having a chat with us.
You guys are doing a great job. Stay well.
Thank you. You've been watching Municipal Matters here on Your TV. I'm your host, Rick Belsman, and we'll see you next time.